meeting at the crossroads where the two forbidden subjects, and you know what they are, religion and politics intersect. This is the Sophie Scholl Roundtable. To my right is Norm Carlson. I'm Mel McGinnis. And last time you heard about us talk about two subjects, one in which we agree upon, the other one we don't. And I leave it to you to guess which one it is we agree upon, conservatism. The other would be atheism. Now, as we pick up from last time, we talked about how with conservatives, there is a change that takes place, but that change is slow, not rapid or radical. And our Constitution promotes that kind of change. It promotes the change as it is written, not the way in which we see Congress doing change now. Now, in addition, we talked about foreign policy, how it's the interests of the United States that must be regarded first. Does it serve, foreign policy, the just interests of the U.S.? Well, there are some other things about conservatism which I think we would agree upon, like this one. Liberty is indivisible. That political freedom cannot long exist without economic freedom. The two go hand in hand. It's like, how can you have political freedom and yet have a highly regulatory government telling everybody what to do, what to make, how to make it, and expect freedom to continue to expand and enlarge and allow people to do what they feel called? Any comments on that principle of
Well, Red China is often cited as a place where you have a lot of economic freedom and essentially no political freedom. But at some point, you don't have economic freedom. You know, the government does regulate everything that you do, and if the Red Chinese Army wants to have a cut of your profits or your patent or whatever, why, I think they'll get them.
Yeah. And how about this? The purpose of government is to protect freedoms, economic, political, through the preservation of internal order, the provision of national defense, and the administration of justice. In other words, conservatives are for ordered liberty.
That's right. They've found this with personality tests that conservatives are much more to put much more value on order and less on adventure and testing the edge of the envelope and all that, whereas liberals, there's some are born with just a proclivity to put less value on order and tradition and more on exploring all the possibilities and so on.
And we would agree here, too. The Constitution of the U.S. is the best arrangement yet devised for empowering government to fulfill its proper role while restraining it from the concentration and abuse of power.
Right. Show me a counterexample for that argument.
Yeah, right. It's so interesting. I don't know if you saw it, but Ami Horowitz went to Yale University, and he does these videos where he does these man-on-the-street interviews. And with students there at Yale, he asked the question, the Constitution, should it be repealed? 65% said yes. And one individual who came up to Ami said, Ami, hey, I know you. Well, that guy didn't sign Ami's petition to have the Constitution repealed, but the reason being that they gave was that the Constitution was a white supremacist doctrine. So you can see what's being taught in a place like Yale when that many say, let's repeal the Constitution.
Well, all these people who think it's that bad should decide which place in the world has it better and tip off these illegal immigrants coming in so that they can get much more benefit from their risk and their expense and their effort.
Right, we should divert them.
You know, why are they coming here?
Right.
We're so bad.
They want to go north of the border, just send them south of the border to Venezuela. So I think that's the best program for them down there if they think the Constitution is so bad and this country is in a toilet. But we think of, here's one. Now, this is one I would like Norm to expand upon here, because this is where we're going to diverge in our opinions. That foremost among the transcendent values is the individual's use of his God-given free will, whence derives his right to be free from the restrictions of arbitrary force. Norm, with conservatism, with those values that it has, like on freedom, do you believe those values are transcendent, or where do they actually come from?
I don't know that question even has meaning, Mel.
Okay.
Doesn't matter where they come from, it's just that they work.
Pragmatic.
Yes.
Just the fact that they work.
I mean, what does that even mean to you, come from? I mean, it's not like something that arrives in a package, with a return address, God or government or something on it.
So with regard to man using his God-given free will, you would have struggle with the free will or the God-given part?
Well, free will is one of the most profound questions that there is, and philosophers have not decided, let alone scientists, whether it even exists or not. And some of these people know a lot more and are a lot more intelligent than I am, and even more than you are. So we ought to be a little bit circumspect what we say about free will.
Right. I think that is a question. Free will. How free are we?
Nobody has had more of a problem deciding whether we have it or not for longer than Christians. I mean,
That's true.
What's the conflict between Calvinism and Arminianism, for heaven's sakes?
Right. Exactly. You get
predestination or
free will. Yeah. You would see Calvinists saying the nature of man is such that he is so imprisoned by his sin that he cannot choose God.
Well, the Calvinists believe in predestination.
Yep.
There's a certain elect that God has known from the beginning of time. You have no way of doing anything about it.
Yep. Yeah. And then the Arminians say, you have this freedom by which to choose.
I don't want Christians coming at me with any kind of a criticism about not knowing whether we have free will or not.
Yeah, with regard to that, I would say, our nature is such that we cannot choose God on our own. Yet we can make choices. We have an aspect of free agency about us to make decisions whether for good or bad.
Boy, what double talk. Seriously. You can't have it both ways. You're desperately trying to, but you can't. You can't have it both ways. It's that simple.
Well, regarding the ability for man to choose God, no. God has to intervene. Whereas man can make the choice to do good to his neighbor or not do, that's a choice that's still there.
Oh, yeah.
Still very much present.
There's nobody arguing about that, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, philosophers and scientists do argue whether we have free will at all, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm not qualified to come down on one side or the other, frankly. I mean, it certainly seems to me that we do. But yet it seems impossible where it can be how it can be arise in animal behavior.
Okay, yeah. It's interesting because I think of conservatism as a political philosophy. And I embrace it wholeheartedly. And I would say it's rooted in my understanding of God. Meaning, I don't think of myself first as a conservative. I feel like it's got to be based on something.
And I say God doesn't have anything to do with it.
Okay. And from that perspective of conservatism, then would you say that it's based on a pragmatic point of view?
Oh, yes. There's a lot of pragmatism in conservatism, all right.
Okay.
A great deal of it.
Okay. So would you see yourself more of basing it on pragmatism, your life, than conservatism, or is it the other way around?
Well, I know that science has determined that a lot of it is inborn proclivity. And there are 4 or 5 basic personality elements, and that's one of them. But, you can play that up or you can play that down as you go through life, and you learn and you change. And what I've learned and studied, I've become more conservative and more consistently conservative. Now, nobody's consistently 100% anything political. I was for the superconducting super collider. I'm for an aggressive space exploration program, and even for the state and even federal collection of folklore and subsidization of museums and even some of classical music. Those are not conservative, certainly not libertarian beliefs, but nevertheless, I think those are advisable on a pragmatic basis because they make for a better life and a better culture, a better nation. And the private sector isn't going to do it.
Yeah. And then for like the moral issues, like I would say abortion is wrong because it's rooted in Scripture, meaning the element of creation merely doesn't begin when one is born. It takes place in the womb.
It reminds me so much of a conversation I had about 1970 with a beautiful 18-year-old girl, nicest girl, and I told her, you better come up with the rational justification for your beliefs, behavior, and morals apart from your religion. In the event you ever lose your religion, just think of this question. If God has these rules, did he make them up just arbitrarily, or is there some rational basis for them? Well, if there's a rational basis, what do you need God for in the explanation of why you believe that and why you behave that way?
And then the point comes, where does rationality come from?
Where does mathematics come from?
Correct.
It exists as, I don't even know how to put it into words, and I'm not sure that anybody does.
So with mathematics,
they don't come from somewhere, they exist.
Yeah. And the same would be true for logic.
What I thought we were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, rationality, logic, all those things.
That's what rationality is recognizing and reasoning with the laws and rules of logic.
Yeah. So for you, it's simply enough that they exist.
Right.
And there is no need for an explanation as to why or how.
Right, just like the weather. It used to be, God decreed that the storm came up and hindered the army from winning the battle. Well, you don't need God in the explanation. It's an enormous, superfluous violation of Occam's razor.
Okay. And Occam's razor, you're talking about simply the best way or the shortest way to explain something.
The explanation that requires the fewest extraneous interventions and factors. The simplest, yes.
Okay. All right. And here you see the two of us seeing eye to eye on conservative principles. I think we practically go down the list and we're on the same page regarding change being slow. Not that we're opposed to change. In fact, some new changes are good, but have that change proceed slowly. Have the interests of our nation be first in priority. Believe in the Constitution, the preserving of those liberties that are protected in that document. The government is there to protect those rights. Believing liberty is indivisible, meaning economic, political freedom go together. It's just the issue of the principle of God-given free will, recognizing transcendent values are part and parcel of conservative principles. Now, would you say that they're or it doesn't really matter if they're not?
Conservatism, like everything else, Christians throw God in there when it's absolutely not a necessary proposition.
Okay.
I found this wonderful. Well, it's like the joke. Thank God for the Irish that they can still make fun of themselves. He's traveling around in Dublin and he's trying to find a parking place, and he prayed, God, if you'll show, it's just a very important doctor's appointment. If you'll just give me a parking spot while I'll go to Mass every week and I'll quit drinking, we'll just send a parking there. He saw this parking place. He says, never mind, God, I found one on my own. Well, it's funny because it illustrates a point. It's the Occam's razor thing again.
Okay.
Christians will, with admittedly on pure faith, just graft God onto all these events and all their decisions and all these things that happen to them or for them or with them. It isn't necessary. You can explain it perfectly well without. And God is the most complex and unlikely and unverifiable presupposition that the mind of man has ever made. And yet, because it's familiar, people think nothing of it. And they all adopt it every day.
So there you see, we'll leave off today's show with an understanding that, yeah, you can be an atheist and conservative, though when it comes to the bottom line of maybe why we're conservative, that's where the paths diverge. But thank you for joining us here on this edition of the Sophie Scholl Roundtable.
Yeah, this basic personality trait that predisposes